Angela had always lived a life that seemed charmed from the outside. The luxury condo, the designer clothes, the weekends in Europe with Edward. Everything painted a picture of effortless wealth and endless opportunity. But appearances are cruel illusions, and the truth has a way of shattering them at the most unexpected moments. It began with a single phone call. Angela's voice trembled as she spoke to her mother, words spilling out in a rush of panic and confusion. Debts she couldn't pay. A man she trusted who had vanished, leaving her to face the consequences alone. Every word she uttered was heavy with desperation, a stark contrast to the confident, carefree woman who had once left home with her suitcase full of dreams. "We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've sold your beach house," she said, voice cracking with urgency. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly see, was that the beach house was not hers to sell. It was a piece of history, a repository of family memories built over decades, a symbol of love and care that her mother had worked tirelessly to preserve. And Antonia, her mother, had a plan, one that Angela would never expect. As Angela spoke, tears began to fall, unbidden and uncontrollable. They weren't the polite tears of inconvenience or disappointment. They were the raw, humiliating tears of someone who had finally realized the fragility of their choices. She had relied on others for so long, thinking life would always be forgiving, that money and charm could erase every mistake. Now, faced with the weight of her actions, Angela felt a crushing wave of accountability that she had never known before. Antonia listened quietly, letting her daughter unravel. She had seen this coming for months, if not years. Angela needed to understand that wealth and privilege could never replace character, effort, and integrity. She needed to learn, in the harshest way possible, that life has a way of teaching lessons when we are unwilling to listen. Antonia had decided it was time for Angela to hit rock bottom, not as punishment, but as preparation for the woman she was capable of becoming. Angela's sobs echoed through the apartment, a sound of someone finally confronting their own failures. She was alone in her despair, yet paradoxically, it was the first moment she truly felt the presence of her mother, not as a provider of comfort or wealth, but as a guardian who loved her enough to let her struggle. The weight of responsibility, the sting of betrayal by Edward, the suffocating pressure of debts and mistakes, it all converged in that small living room, turning privilege into a profound lesson. By the end of the evening, Angela was exhausted, not just physically but emotionally. She had crossed a threshold she could never uncross. The breaking point had arrived, and with it, the first glimmer of understanding. She did not yet know the full scope of what her mother had planned, nor the journey that awaited her. But in that moment, as she sat slumped in despair, one undeniable truth emerged. Life would never allow her to take what she had for granted again. While Angela lay in her despair, Antonia was already weaving a plan that only a mother who truly understood the weight of life's lessons could conceive. To the world, she might have appeared to be powerless, a widow quietly enduring the passage of time. But in truth, she had been observing every detail, every mistake, every careless decision Angela had made. And she knew that the only way to save her daughter was to let her save herself. Antonia's strategy was simple in concept, but excruciating in execution. Angela would face consequences, not to humiliate her, but to teach her something no amount of money or privilege could ever provide. She had witnessed too many young people like her daughter, who believed life owed them its comforts, faltering at the first sign of struggle. Angela needed to feel the cold bite of reality, to understand that dignity, responsibility, and respect were earned, not given. That night, Antonia stayed awake long after her daughter's tears had dried. She reviewed every financial transaction, every property document, every legal loophole that Edward had exploited. Every step Angela had taken toward luxury and dependence now became a part of Antonia's silent counterattack. She was meticulous, ensuring that when the truth was revealed, it would not destroy Angela, but transform her. The next morning, Antonia began subtle interventions. She quietly recovered properties that had been fraudulently sold, resolved legal entanglements, and ensured that Angela's financial burdens would eventually be lifted. But she did not reveal any of this to her daughter. To Angela, it seemed as if the world had turned against her completely, leaving her to face hardship alone. And that was exactly the point. Antonia understood that true lessons are learned in solitude, in the quiet struggle where no one is there to cushion the fall. She also arranged a small, seemingly humble job for Angela, a night cleaning position at a local office building. It was deliberate, calculated, and purposeful. Angela would confront honest work for the first time in her life, feel the satisfaction of earned income, and learn the dignity in small, unglamorous tasks. Antonia knew that through this, her daughter would begin to appreciate the true value of effort, and the kind of self-respect that could never be bought. But more than that, Antonia's plan was also a test of character. She wanted to see if Angela could emerge from the crisis not bitter, not broken, but wiser and more compassionate. Could she recognize the difference between superficial luxury and meaningful achievement? Could she find gratitude in struggle? Could she reclaim the integrity she had carelessly discarded in her pursuit of comfort? As Antonia watched her daughter stumble through the early days of hardship, she felt a mixture of pain and hope. Every tear, every anxious sigh, every moment of fatigue was a small victory in disguise. Angela was hitting rock bottom, but only so she could find her own way back, stronger, more resilient, and truly capable of valuing everything that mattered in life. Antonia knew it would not be easy for her daughter, but she also knew that it was necessary. True growth, she understood, comes not from rescue, but from the courage to rise after being abandoned by circumstance. And as Angela faced the beginning of her trial, her mother silently promised herself that when this journey ended, the bond between them would be unbreakable, not just as mother and daughter, but as two women who had chosen each other after enduring the hardest of lessons. Angela's world crumbled faster than she could have imagined. The luxurious apartment, the designer clothes, the lavish lifestyle, all gone. Every call unanswered, every promise broken by Edward's deceit, left her feeling small, unworthy, and utterly alone. She had imagined life in Europe as a dream, but now it had become a nightmare, a mirror reflecting every foolish choice she had made. The first days were the hardest. Angela wandered through the city with no direction, overwhelmed by shame and despair. She could barely afford a cup of coffee, let alone pay rent or settle bills she had taken for granted. Every text from her mother went unanswered. Every call from friends seemed distant and hollow. She had reached the bottom, the absolute point where no comfort, no distraction, no charm could save her. The night cleaning job Antonia had arranged loomed over her like an unfamiliar, humiliating challenge. Angela hesitated at the office door, uniform in hand, heart pounding. The fluorescent lights and the smell of cleaning supplies were a far cry from the elegance she had grown accustomed to. Her hands trembled as she dusted desks, swept floors, and emptied bins. Every ache in her body reminded her that she was no longer pampered or entitled. She was accountable, responsible, and painfully aware of how little she had achieved on her own. As the weeks passed, Angela began to experience a strange transformation. At first, it was resentment, toward the job, toward her mother, toward herself. But gradually, she noticed something shifting inside her. Each completed task, each honest hour of labor, brought a flicker of pride. For the first time, she understood what it meant to earn something, to see the tangible results of her own effort. She realized that dignity was not a gift to be claimed. It was something to be built, brick by brick, day by day. Isolation, too, became a teacher. Without the distractions of wealth or luxury, Angela faced the truths she had been avoiding. She reflected on her mistakes, the choices that had led her here, and the people she had hurt along the way. Tears came often, but they were different now. Tears of recognition, humility, and quiet determination. She understood that rock bottom was not just a place of despair, but a foundation for growth. Even the nights were filled with lessons. As Angela returned home exhausted, she confronted her own fears and doubts. She realized that Edward had not only betrayed her, but he had also given her a gift in disguise, the chance to rediscover herself without illusions or shortcuts. Every hardship reminded her of what she truly valued: family, respect, and the inner strength she had long ignored. By the end of the third week, something remarkable had begun to emerge. Angela no longer felt entirely defeated. She felt wary, cautious, but awake, aware of her own resilience. Hitting rock bottom had stripped away illusions, vanity, and entitlement, leaving her with raw potential, ready to rebuild her life on foundations of honesty, effort, and self-respect. Angela did not yet know how the pieces would fall back into place, but she had discovered something far more valuable than money: the power to stand up again, to work for her own dignity, and to earn the life she had once taken for granted. Rock bottom had become the first step toward true freedom. The early mornings became Angela's new rhythm. She no longer lingered in bed, waiting for life to hand her opportunities. Instead, she rose with the sun, preparing herself for another day at the cleaning job her mother had arranged. The uniform, once humiliating, now felt like armor. It reminded her that she was taking control of her own life, one sweep, one mop, one task at a time. The first week was brutal. Angela's muscles ached, her back screamed, and every day brought exhaustion that she had never known in her life of comfort. She made mistakes, forgot supplies, spilled water, misjudged deadlines, but she also noticed small victories. The satisfaction of completing a floor spotless, of earning a genuine thank you from a client, began to outweigh the discomfort. For the first time, she understood the dignity of honest work, the kind that cannot be bought or inherited. Her mother watched quietly, letting Angela navigate the challenges without interference. Antonia knew the lessons of failure were as crucial as the lessons of success. She observed from a distance, seeing the change unfold in small, almost imperceptible moments. Angela started to take pride in punctuality, in careful attention to detail, in the way she interacted with coworkers. Every simple act of responsibility became a stepping stone toward rebuilding herself. Angela also began to appreciate the people around her differently. The women she worked with were no longer just staff or helpers in her mind. They were hard-working individuals, each with stories of struggle, resilience, and courage. She shared lunches, swapped advice, and slowly became part of a community that thrived not on wealth, but on mutual respect and perseverance. She realized that empathy and connection were far more valuable than the social status she had once craved. Money, though modest, began to hold a different meaning. Each dollar she earned was tied directly to her effort, her skill, and her determination. She saved carefully, budgeting meticulously, understanding that security and independence were earned, not granted. Even the act of buying groceries or paying her modest rent became a lesson in responsibility and gratitude. She no longer saw money as a means of indulgence. It had become a symbol of her self-reliance and her newfound respect for the work required to achieve it. Some days, Angela felt frustrated, longing for her old life. But those days were shorter now. She had tasted the rewards of perseverance, however small they were. A polished office floor, a client's appreciative smile, a coworker's shared story. These moments became her new milestones, her markers of progress and personal growth. By the end of the month, Angela realized she was no longer just surviving. She was transforming. Her confidence was growing quietly, rooted not in wealth or luxury, but in competence, discipline, and integrity. Each small victory, no matter how insignificant it seemed, became proof that she could rebuild herself from scratch. And with every completed task, every earned dollar, and every smile shared with a coworker, she stepped closer to the woman she was meant to become: resilient, humble, and fully aware of the value of her own efforts. The day Angela walked into Mr. Peterson's office felt heavier than any she had experienced in weeks. The polished floors, the leather chairs, and the faint scent of old books and polished wood seemed almost ceremonial, as if the room itself knew a life-changing moment was about to unfold. She sat across from her mother, heart pounding, unsure if she was prepared for the truth. Antonia's face was calm, almost serene, but her eyes held the weight of the secret she had carried. "Angela," she began softly, "your debts, they've been cleared. Every property sold fraudulently has been recovered. You are completely free." Angela blinked, disbelieving. Her mind raced back to the sleepless nights, the relentless work, the fear and shame she had carried like a second skin. All of it, The desperation, the tears, the doubts, had led to this moment. "But how?" she whispered. Her mother smiled, a mixture of relief and pride. "I didn't want you to learn the wrong lesson. I wanted you to understand the value of your own effort. I wanted you to know the dignity in earning your own path, even if it meant struggling along the way." Angela's lips trembled, tears welling up, not of sorrow but of understanding. She had expected relief to feel like freedom, like a sudden lifting of weight, but instead it felt like recognition. Recognition of every hard-earned lesson, every small victory that had brought her here. "And the cleaning job?" Antonia asked, her voice gentle. "You can quit now if you want." Angela shook her head. "No. I want to finish what I started. I can't go back to the life I had before, pretending nothing happened. I need this." Her voice was firm now, steady in a way it hadn't been when she first began this journey. Antonia reached across the desk and took her daughter's hand. "You've grown in ways that money alone could never teach. You've found respect, responsibility, and a sense of self that will guide you for the rest of your life." Angela's chest tightened as she realized the full scope of what her mother had done. Antonia hadn't abandoned her. She had allowed her to confront life's harshest truths, to fail and to rise again, stronger than before. The lessons had been painful, yes, but they were real and they were hers. I don't know if I can forgive myself," Angela admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to forgive yourself for mistakes you've learned from," her mother said. "The important part is what you do next. And what you've done. It's more than I could have hoped for." In that office, amidst the muted elegance of authority and quiet power, Angela felt something shift inside her. The fear, the despair, the anger, they all melted into clarity. She understood now that her mother's plan wasn't cruel. It was transformative. Every struggle, every long hour, every tear had led to a profound awakening. And for the first time in weeks, Angela didn't just feel relief. She felt purpose. The weeks that followed the revelation in Mr. Peterson's office were quiet, yet charged with subtle transformation. Angela returned to her night cleaning job, a task she once would have seen as beneath her, but now embraced with a new sense of purpose. Each sweep of the mop, each polished surface, was no longer a reminder of failure. It was a testament to her resilience, her effort, and her choice to stand on her own 2 feet. Antonia watched from a distance, silently proud. She could have given Angela the keys to a life of ease, to luxury and comfort without work. But she didn't. And Angela, perhaps for the first time, understood the profound difference between being rescued and being empowered. One afternoon, as Angela prepared to leave for work, she turned to her mother. "Mom, I need to finish what I started. I can't just walk away and pretend the lessons don't matter." Antonia nodded, warmth in her eyes. "I understand, honey. But remember, it's not about punishment. It's about growth. The dignity you find in your own effort is worth more than any inherited wealth." Angela's resolve had deepened. She knew now that comfort without effort was empty. The financial security her mother had restored to her life was real, but it was a tool, not a crutch. The satisfaction she derived from earning her own money, helping others, and rebuilding her life on her terms was far richer than any luxury she had once taken for granted. The city streets she walked to work at night had a different meaning now. Each person she passed, each encounter she had, reminded her that life was not measured by possessions, but by the integrity of one's choices. She became more observant, more patient, more empathetic. The camaraderie she found with her co-workers was genuine, rooted in shared experience rather than status. She began helping a young mother struggling with daycare expenses, contributing from her own modest savings. Each act of kindness reinforced the lessons she had learned, and the pride she felt was unmatched by anything money could buy. At home, Antonia noticed subtle changes in Angela's demeanor. Her daughter moved with a quiet confidence, a calm assurance that came not from privilege, but from the knowledge that she had faced hardship and emerged stronger. Angela no longer relied on the idea of being saved. She had become her own savior. One evening, sitting together over a simple meal, Angela spoke with a clarity that had been absent in her life before. "Mom, I've realized something important. Life isn't about avoiding struggle. It's about how you face it. I could have taken the easy path, but I'd never have understood the value of myself, of my work, or of the love and trust you've given me. I want to keep earning my way, not because I need to, but because it matters to me." Antonia smiled, a deep satisfaction settling over her. She had never wanted her daughter to merely survive. She wanted her to flourish. And in choosing dignity over comfort, Angela was doing just that. That night, mother and daughter sat quietly together, a sense of mutual respect and understanding filling the room. For the first time in a long while, comfort had a new meaning, earned, chosen, and shared. Angela's transformation did not go unnoticed. While she focused on her own journey, the world around her began to see the change too. Aurora, her mother's longtime friend, had always been a quiet observer, but even she was taken aback by how much Angela had grown. One Friday afternoon, as she stepped into the kitchen for tea, Aurora's eyes immediately caught the subtle confidence in Angela's posture, the way she moved with purpose, and the calm, assured tone of her voice. "Antonia," Aurora said, setting down her cup, "there are some unusual rumors going around the neighborhood." Antonia raised an eyebrow. "Rumors?" "Yes," Aurora replied. "People are saying that you're not as poor as we all thought. Someone saw Angela leaving a very elegant lawyer's office downtown, and then paying off debts at the bank. They're talking about your beach house too. They're wondering how you managed it all." Antonia sipped her tea slowly, carefully choosing her words. "Aurora, you know me. What exactly do you want to know?" "I want to know if my friend of 40 years has been hiding something from me," Aurora admitted, curiosity lacing her voice. Antonia smiled faintly. It was time for honesty. She shared the truth of her plan, the weeks she had watched Angela struggle, the lessons carefully orchestrated to teach resilience, self-respect, and the value of effort. She told Aurora about the legal settlements, the recovered properties, and the financial security she had quietly maintained. Aurora listened in stunned silence. That is both brilliant and terrible at the same time," she said finally. "Terrible because you let your daughter suffer. Brilliant because it taught her lessons she couldn't have learned any other way." Antonia nodded. "Yes, it hurt every day to watch her cry, to see her exhausted and defeated. But I knew that if I intervened too soon, she wouldn't truly understand her own strength. She needed to hit rock bottom to learn to rise on her own." Aurora's expression softened. "And does she now understand?" Antonia gestured toward the living room, where Angela was helping a coworker with paperwork, using her own savings to support someone in need. "Look for yourself," she said. "She has access to wealth, comfort, and security, but she chooses to work, to help, to earn. She has learned the dignity of effort, the value of compassion, and the meaning of true wealth." Aurora's eyes glistened. "She's not the same Angela who left for Europe months ago." "No," Antonia agreed. "She is stronger, wiser, and more empathetic. She now sees money as a tool, not a measure of worth. She respects herself and the people around her." In that moment, both women felt the weight of transformation. Recognition had arrived, not as praise for wealth, but as acknowledgement of growth, maturity, and character. Angela's journey was no longer a private struggle. It had become a story of empowerment, resilience, and the quiet beauty of choosing dignity over dependence. Aurora smiled, finally understanding the full picture. "You were cruel, yes, but you were also wise. And your daughter is extraordinary." Antonia reached for her friend's hand, feeling a quiet sense of completion. The lessons had been hard, but the results were undeniable. Angela had become her own person, independent, capable, and deeply aware of the value of life's true treasures. The weeks following Angela's revelation were quiet but purposeful. The pain of the past had settled into something like wisdom, a calm clarity that guided every decision she made. Her mother, Antonia, watched in awe as the daughter she had once feared was lost to recklessness now blossomed into a woman who understood responsibility in its deepest sense. Angela didn't waste time clinging to past mistakes or wealth she hadn't earned. She chose instead to use her newfound perspective to make a real difference in the lives of others. At her cleaning job, she formed connections with the women she worked alongside. Each one carried her own struggles. Single mothers scraping to keep their families fed, women navigating domestic violence, co-workers burdened by debt or heartbreak. Angela recognized herself in them. Not the rich woman she had been, but the daughter who had been forced to fight for dignity. One afternoon, she sat down with Mrs. Johnson, the kind-hearted woman who ran the daycare where a co-worker's son stayed. The child's mother had been struggling to pay fees, and Angela quietly offered to cover the cost from her own savings. She didn't make a show of it. She simply handed over the envelope and smiled. "Some things can't be measured by budgets," she explained. Word of Angela's actions began to spread, subtly at first, among the women she helped. They weren't stories of money or charity, but stories of empowerment, empathy, and courage. Angela's presence became a beacon, not of wealth, but of the possibilities that arose from learning the hard way. Antonia noticed the change in her daughter with a mixture of pride and relief. One evening, as they shared tea on the porch, she said, "You've done more than I ever expected, Angela. You've taken lessons that could have hardened you and turned them into something beautiful. Something that helps others." Angela smiled softly. "I had to learn the hard way, Mom. But now I see that my experience isn't just mine. It can be used to lift others up, to make sure they don't have to suffer as I did. Or at least not alone." It wasn't long before Angela approached her mother with a proposal that combined their visions. She suggested turning the family's beach house into a temporary shelter for women recovering from abuse or financial ruin. A safe haven where they could find stability, guidance, and hope. Antonia's eyes welled with tears. The very place they had feared might symbolize loss was now a symbol of redemption and service. "This is perfect," Antonia said, holding her daughter's hands. "Your father would have loved this. Our home is finally being used for what truly matters." Angela nodded, a quiet determination in her gaze. "We can help women stand on their own 2 feet. Teach them the value of hard work, dignity, and self-respect. That's what I learned, and now it's my turn to give it back." From that moment, their lives became a cycle of purpose. Days were filled with work, planning, and outreach. Nights were spent in reflection, ensuring every decision aligned with their mission. Angela had transformed her lessons into action, and in doing so, she discovered that real wealth was never money. It was the ability to empower others, to create change, and to find meaning in life's hardships. The daughter who once believed that comfort meant luxury had now embraced a life defined by compassion, responsibility, and courage. She had truly learned to turn her lessons into good. Angela's journey had taught her many lessons, but the most challenging one was yet to come: the art of truly letting go. She had faced betrayal, loss, and the hollow promises of comfort she once chased without thought. She had learned the value of work, dignity, and self-respect, but forgiveness, especially toward herself, remained a delicate, fragile task. One quiet evening, Angela sat on the porch, the sky painted in deep shades of orange and purple. The sound of the waves was a soft reminder that life continued, relentless yet beautiful. Her mother joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. They didn't speak at first, each lost in their own reflections. The silence was comforting, like a pause that allowed their hearts to catch up to their minds. "Mom," Angela began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I keep thinking about Edward, about all the mistakes I made, about the house, the debts, everything I threw away. And I wonder, do I ever really let it go?" Antonia handed her the cup, her eyes steady. "Letting go doesn't mean forgetting, Angela. Doesn't mean pretending it never hurt. Letting go means accepting what happened, understanding what it taught you, and choosing not to let it control your future." Angela nodded, sipping her tea slowly. "It's just, sometimes the memories feel heavier than the lessons. The guilt, the anger, the shame, they all come back at night." "That's natural," her mother replied. "But remember, you've already taken the hardest steps. You faced your lowest point, you worked to rebuild yourself, and you've started using your experiences to help others. That's how you honor the past without letting it imprison you. Angela looked out at the horizon. The setting sun reflected on the water, shimmering like a promise. She thought about the shelter they were planning, the women they would help, and the meaningful life she was carving from her own struggles. She realized that holding on to regret only dimmed that light. "I think I'm beginning to understand," she said softly. "The past is part of me, yes, but it doesn't define me anymore. It taught me, but it doesn't own me. I can honor the lessons without carrying the pain." Antonia smiled, reaching for her hand. "Exactly, honey. And every day you make that choice, the past loses its power. Every act of kindness, every moment of integrity, every decision you make to live intentionally, that's how you let go." Angela squeezed her mother's hand. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of liberation, a quiet but profound relief. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living consciously, aware of her mistakes but no longer shackled by them. That night, as Angela lay in bed, she allowed herself to feel the weight of closure. She thought of Edward, of the house, of her reckless choices, and then she let each memory drift like leaves on the current of the sea. She realized that letting go wasn't an event. It was a continuous, deliberate practice. By dawn she felt lighter. The chains of her past had loosened. Angela had finally learned to release the pain, not erase the lessons, and embrace a future where her past informed her, but never confined her. In that peace, she found a strength more enduring than wealth, more profound than comfort, the strength of a soul freed from its own regrets.